Hey guys, it's Zach back with another review. Desperately in need of either A haircut, or B, a camera angle that doesn't quite accentuate my receding hairline as much as this one does. Hey look, it's the Scyrox V6, the mouse we'll be reviewing today. I didn't quite get to it in 2024, but is it already good enough to be a contender for my 2025 Mouse of the Year? Let's find out. So here we have it, the Scyrox V6, their second venture into the gaming mouse arena, following up their V8 mouse over here, which was like a Sora X2H kind of a shape. No crazy versions to talk about on this, nothing Pro, Ultra, anything like that. It's got the Nordic MCU, 3950 sensor, 8K hertz polling, and a 250 milliamp hour battery. And yeah, let's see what the mouse is all about. So it has the arm-on opticals like mini mice in this price range or a little bit cheaper. These are very well implemented in my estimation. There's a decent amount of pre-travel, nothing crazy. Decent posts, nothing crazy. Very spammable clicks. They're not the lightest. If you look at the top, they are what I would say is very heavy, almost akin to what you saw on the GPX2 first batch when it came out. And they're probably medium actuation down where I click, which is exactly how I like it. Very snappy. They're never going to get too heavy for you. They're going to be a little bit heavier than what you would see on the Mad R that I just recently reviewed. And my right click is a little bit heavier than my left click here. Looking at the play, there's not a lot of side-to-side play here. Pretty impressive stuff for a mouse in this price range. Nothing at all if you click at the top. So really impressed with that. Scroll wheel, very similar to the V8. The rubberized scroll wheel. It's very notchy, medium steps here. The click is very spammable, medium to heavier actuation, but for how heavy the initial press to get it is, it rebounds and clicks very well. So very happy with that. One more note, Scyrox had an issue on their V8s. Mine sort of had it where there was a fair amount of play here on the main buttons, you can see, and they've really kind of clamped that down on the V6, so I'm pretty impressed. Coming to coding, I did a quick short on this and I was super impressed if you saw that with the coding on this mouse. It's not quite Viper V3 Pro level, but if there's any humidity, if your hands just aren't like freezing cold ice cubes, mine are sometimes to be honest, this gets really grippy really quickly. Like it does feel rubberized. It's better than an ATK coating. It's not quite as good as the Viper V3. This is the ATK X1 Ultimate, and it's a little bit grippier than that, and I had a lot of good things to say about this coating, so I'm super impressed with this. The coating on the V8 was a little more, it was probably closer to plain plastic. There was a coating, but it was a little thin. You could get a good grip with this if there was some humidity, if your hands were a little warmer, but they've stepped it up on the V6. Taking a look here at the side buttons, they're very spammable, very snappy, rebound super well. You can sink the back button into the shell, which is not surprising. Get some play if you press on the back and the front here. Front button a little more in place, but I really have no complaints about these. They're very accessible. They kind of shoot upwards more, which is very typical of an ambi mouse. Not like the X2H Mini, but still very, very accessible here. I had no complaints using them in game, in Fortnite, browsing, Marvel Rivals. They performed very well for me. Taking a look at the bottom of the mouse, if I had to complain about anything on the V6, it would be the skates. They are not the same quality as the V8 skates, so I don't have my V8 stock skates anymore. I took them off initially to just test other skates, and they kind of tore apart, but they were higher quality as far as the glide and like the roundness, the thickness. These skates here are pretty thin. They're the same level or a little worse maybe than like an ATK skate. They're like a 2 out of 5 speed, and they don't feel particularly good. I won't notice them in a negative way when I'm using them, but I have nothing really good to say about them, so like kind of disappointed when it comes to these skates. I also wish they had done something more like a large pad size like you would see on this X1 Ultimate or a Viper V3 Pro, for example. Always my favorite kind of skate. Yep, chose A7 coming soon in the video, has a larger pad skate here. I always enjoy that kind of skate if I can get it, but this design's fine if you give me a higher quality skate. I'll probably be putting dots on this. I have some Magic Ice skates coming. Also, if you're wondering, yes, I'm a little extra. This is their freefall base SV Plus control, and I wanted to color match my mouse and mouse pad because why not? Plus, I haven't done a review on this mouse pad yet, and I've been trying to do a different mouse pad for every review so far. I think I failed once. Kind of fun. For build integrity on the V8, there was a fair amount of flexing here if you really applied strong amounts of pressure to this. Nothing crazy that you saw in game, but it would flare out the front here a little bit. They've improved the amount that it kind of flexes here in the center of the mouse. You can still see some here on the top though if I really press at this spot, and it will flare this spot here out a little bit. It's something you notice in game. It's generally well built. If you apply pressure at the front, nothing really happens. Back, nothing happens. Every mouse that's not a rock does have some flex here if you press on the bottom, which I'm not sure when that's ever occurring in game. You can actually hit the clicks if you do that hard enough, but the build integrity on this overall is good for a budget mouse and very passable in game, so really no complaints. So looking at some shape comparisons here, I regrettably don't have a HTS Plus or an HTS Plus on me, which this is basically a shape clone of. But you can see here that the Scyrox V6 is just a little bit bigger in length. There's a little bit slight difference in the outline of the shape here. In hand, it felt virtually like just a slightly larger version of it, kind of like the M7 felt with a Zowie U2. And I do happen to have, though, the Phylina S450, which if you take a look at that versus the Scyrox V6 is even closer than the G Wolves HTS Plus because it's just a little bit larger. The only difference is the Phylina is slightly taller, but that's the direct shape comparison I will do now. So there's less to write home about here than you would think between these two mice. I'm going to go over the Phylina S450 just in case you're considering these two budget options because the G Wolves mice are so expensive. As you saw, $159 there for the HTS Plus. The shapes and these are just remarkably similar. There's a slight difference on like the way that this is rounded, the edging on the front here of the clicks. This has Juana blue shell transparent pink dots, which are very light and spammable and actually quite satisfying. They're a very good implementation. It's got the same exact scroll wheel texturing that you saw on the HTS Plus here, as well as the same button, like just shockingly similar aesthetically. They do split their side buttons, but the QC on these side buttons is pretty terrible. You can sink them really, really far into the shell, both front and back, and actually with the main click when doing so. I also had an issue on mine. I had to move the battery back to balance the weight because this was very oddly front heavy. And then I don't know if you can see this here, but when I applied side pressure, I actually kind of broke part of this. So there's now like a popping sound you can hear on my S450. This is an earlier copy, and I believe they've improved on some of these issues in newer S450s, and I do like the overall implementation. It is, however, very heavy, as the S450 comes in at around 57 grams on my scale, and this is stock battery. You could battery mod that down a bit if you wanted to pretty easily, whereas the Scyrox comes in at 43 grams. So that's the main trade-off you're losing if you come over to the Phylina. I believe the weight on the HTS Plus is 47 grams, so much more competitive with the Scyrox. So that is one thing you need to consider if you're looking at the Phylina S450. Do note, however, there is a rumored Phylina S450 coming out, although this is from June from Gen 3D Tech. This is rumored to have 38 gram weight, 8K polling, and much better looking skates and side buttons. So do keep an eye out for this mouse to come out. I'll be super hyped to get it if it does come out, and I'll definitely review it. A few quick differences I do remember and recall from the HTS Plus. This is the 8K version. They have this DPI button here on the top, which I think is pretty aesthetically displeasing, but doesn't really affect functionality. I don't love the kind of knurled scroll wheel that they have here, but that again, personal preference versus the rubberized, different textured one on the V6. One more thing I wanted to mention is the side buttons here do have this little dip, so you can differentiate them, but they are directly connected, whereas the side buttons on the V6 are separated. So I do enjoy the V6 more so overall. One more odd thing that I always found with honestly every single G Wolves mouse I've ever used is for some reason their sensor implementations feel floaty to me, and I don't know why. And then the main clicks on this mouse were also just kind of hollow and unsatisfying, whereas I really, really enjoy the outright opticals in the V6. Just in case you were unaware, this is using the same Scyrox S Center web-based software that the V8 was using. Big fan of this. You get all your settings here. This is what I use. I always have competition mode, long distance on. I've decided motion sync is a scam, and I've turned it off. I don't want to add that extra little latency. I play in 2K hertz, but yeah, this function's great. And I'm always a fan of a WebDriver, which if you watch my channel, you'll be aware of. As far as in-game, I had a great experience with this mouse. The way that the sides taper and the length of the mouse, 119 millimeters with my grip, my pinky and thumb perfectly align with the sensor, and I just feel really in control of the mouse at all times. It's not a back hump mouse, but it has that prominent mid hump, and that really provides support for tracking scenarios. But the length also allows for there to be micro adjustments in hand, and it's just a really, really good claw shape and a great shape for me. So I'll definitely continue using this mouse quite a bit going forward. It was great in Kovacs, Fortnite, Marvel Rivals. I really had no complaints about it. So completely stock, we have the Scyrox V6 coming in at 42.5 grams. I can see that better than you can because the color of the mouse, the color of the mouse pad completely messed with my phone's ability to zoom on this scale because of the blue color here, and it took me way too long to figure that out, but oh well. Taking some measurements here, I'm getting the narrowest part of the waist at 54.1 millimeters. The widest point of the back here coming in at 61.2 millimeters. And then I'm getting a maximum hump height of exactly 40 millimeters right on the dot. So that about wraps it up for my thoughts on the Scyrox V6. I have no real complaints beside the skates, and actually really enjoyed almost every other aspect of the mouse, particularly the coding, the clicks, and the shape. So to answer my question from the intro, yes, this is already a contender for my 2025 Mouse of the Year, and I can highly recommend it to anyone. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and follow me on X, not Twitter, at DazTrazak, and check out the Mousecast podcast linked in the description below. We release every Friday. And with that, we'll see ya.